Hello, my name is Carol McCoy, and it's my pleasure today to conduct this oral interview at the Nashville Bar Association located at 150 4th Avenue North in Nashville, Tennessee on August 27th, 2025. This interview is being conducted for the Legal History Project of the Nashville Bar Association. It's my pleasure to interview Marlene Moses. And if you would, please tell me your full name, date, and place of birth.
Marlene Eskin Moses was born in Nashville, Tennessee on December 23rd, 1951.
I'd like to take just a brief time to interview you about your family and the history that you share in Nashville, because you've been here for 4 generations. We won't go all the way back, but let's talk about your grandfather on your mother's side and your grandmother on your mother's side, and then also talk about your paternal grandparents.
My grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side are Aaron and Norma Morris, and both of them were born here in Nashville. And on my father's side, it's Manuel and Leobel Eskind.
And I think you told me that your maternal grandfather, born in Nashville, as you said, I think it was 1905.
My grandfather was born March 3rd, 1905. That's right, Aaron Morris.
And what did he do?
He was actually in the furniture company business. It was Morris Furniture Company, and he had lots of locations throughout the city. And his logo was the working man's friend.
And I think your maternal grandmother was born.
My maternal grandmother was born April 5th, 1906.
And how about your maternal grandmother? Was she active in the community?
She was. She absolutely was. And she was an artist, and she was a golfer, and very social.
Now that I think played into the other set of grandparents that you had too, very active. Tell me about Manuel Eskin.
Manuel was born here as well, and he was in the dry goods business when he first started working.
Now he was born in 1899.
Manuel was born June 16th, 1899. Yes.
And you were going to tell me what he did.
Yes. So the dry goods business, which was clothing and the kinds of things that you needed to live in your house, actually. So that's what dry goods was called. And after the dry goods business, and right after Prohibition was lifted, he started a wholesale wine and liquor distributorship, which was called Capital Distributing Company. And actually, it's still in my family now. And it's a very active business, and my son is running it with my brother.
I think he also had a little hand in TV and radio distribution.
Yes. So along the way, when he had the wholesale wine and liquor distributorship, he also had the first dealership for televisions. It had just come on the scene, and he had radios and televisions, and it was an Admiral distributorship. And that's when televisions first came into being. And he and my father actually worked in that business. So it's Capital Appliance. And so the Capital Distributing Company is now called Best Brands.
Did any of his efforts in the commercial sense begin to pick up on the computer business?
Yes. So in order to run the wholesale wine and liquor distributorship, my father, who was working with my grandfather along the way, developed a computer business that could computerize the accounts receivable and the billing and the inventory. And so he took that creation, the computer business, and took it national so that other distributors could use the system as well.
Now he's pretty remarkable, but tell me about your grandmother, Leah. Talk about remarkable.
Leah Bell was very active in the community as well. She too was a golfer, and actually both sets of grandparents were very good friends, and they were together socially and they played golf together. And so it's interesting that their children, two of their children, would ultimately end up getting married. But she was president of the National Council of Jewish Women and was very active and involved in that cause.
And I think you told me she went to Sarah Lawrence.
She did.
Where did your grandfather Manuel go to?
My grandfather Manuel went to Vanderbilt.
And apparently did pretty well.
He did.
Graduated Phi Beta
Phi Beta
Kappa,
Kappa, as did my father.
who also went to
My
Vanderbilt.
father went to
Well,
Vanderbilt
tell
as
me
well.
about your father.
Well, he was very smart, was a great resource for me in math.
And when was he born?
He was born December 25th on Christmas Day in 1928.
And what's his full name?
Edward Noel Eskin, and the Noel is because my grandparents had a sense of humor and decided that Noel should be his middle name, so it's Noel.
Okay, and so how did he participate in the business community in Nashville?
He was very active. He was involved in the distributorship, the
Correct.
wine and liquor distributorship, and then the Admiral business, and then the computer business. And he was also involved in the community as well. He was president of the Jewish Community Center.
Mhm.
And as such, at the time, the Jewish Community Center was on West End, and it was in a small landlocked building. And he actually purchased the property during his term, which is now located on Highway 70 and 100 between both, where the facility is now located and has expanded greatly because they have so much land and property as opposed to just a building on Weston Avenue.
And I think you said he also was a civic citizen involved in politics.
Yes, he absolutely was, and he
Backed candidates and helped out with people getting elected.
he did.
And your grandmother Elaine, you were going to tell me when she was born, but you tell me that.
My mother Elaine was
Oh,
born.
mother, excuse me.
She was born April 18th of 1929.
And you referenced that both your mother and grandmother played golf,
Yes,
but your
yes.
mother was quite good.
My mother was really good. At age 16, she was the city champion, which was amazing because all my family played golf and they played golf really well.
So now I want to come a little bit more to your childhood. And part of that is where you grew up. And you told me that you were living probably in the same neighborhood where you grew up.
Well, that's right. My parents are in the same house that they were in when they married in terms of the same location. It's not the same house because they gave their home to my brother who tore down their house and built a new one, but they have a wing on my brother's house where they now live. So they're all together and they're 96 years old, both of them. And I am a block away from where I was born when I lived
And where you
in
grew
the
up.
home where I grew up. And then so I'm a block away from them in my home.
East Brookville, I think
Yes,
is the street.
is where my parents are living.
That's right. And that's where you grew up.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what it was like as a child, where you went to school, both grade school, middle school, high school.
Yes. I went to Palmer School, which was our neighborhood school. It's now a park. And it's used a lot by the community, but at the time it was a school. It was the same school that my father attended. We had some of the same teachers, which was amazing. And I love Palmer School. I went there from kindergarten to 8th grade. And so did my neighbors. And so we had a school bus that would pick us up at the corner of East Brookfield and Bellamy Boulevard. And every morning we'd ride with Mr. Pollock to school and back.
And what was it like during that time as far as your friends and where you played and what you did?
My friends were in the neighborhood in large part, and we rode bicycles and played in sandboxes and played at each other's homes. And it was really a wonderful community and wonderful safe setting.
A little like Mayberry.
Yes, and in large
Everybody
part.
knew everybody.
We did, and everybody's business, and
Um,
and the parents worked together to make it safe for us to be out and about in the community.
Well, after you finished 8th grade, where did you go?
After that, I went to Hillsborough High School.
And that also required a bus ride, right?
It did.
But how did you spend the time when you weren't in school? Did you all travel as a family? What did you do in your summers?
We would travel some. We would go to Florida some during the winter break. In the summers, we played a lot of golf and tennis and swam and belonged at the time to the Woodmont Country Club, which is now Sugar Tree.
Okay.
It's where houses and a development occurred.
You told me
So
that sometimes there were horses.
now that's in the neighborhood. On East Brookfield, a block from East Brookfield is Percy Warner Park. And so in Percy Warner Park at the time, there was the stables and they had horses. And so we were able to rent the horses, ride them through the park. There were times that we would take them out of the park and bring them down to our house and take them back into the park, which we were not supposed to do, but we did it anyway. And that was just wonderful to be able to go a block away, get on a horse, ride through the park. And we were able to do that as a family and as friends, and we had that opportunity for many, many years.
As you got a little bit older, did you spend some summers at summer camp?
I went to summer camp for 3 years. 2 of the years I was 8 and 9 years old, and I went to Poland, Maine, and it was freezing in those lakes when we went swimming. It was a very competitive camp, and I was the youngest of the campers. And so it was not my most favorite spot, but my aunt had gone there, so my parents thought that I would love it as well, which I did not. But then later I went to a camp in Rocky Mount, Missouri called Wakanda, which I did really love, and I went there a couple of years.
After you got through with middle school and went to, well, actually middle school was the 8th grade and you went to Hillsborough. Can you tell me what were some of your favorite classes?
English was really one of my favorite classes. I liked the teacher a lot. I liked Spanish a lot. So those two were my favorites.
And did you have any part-time or summertime work while you were in high school?
No, I did not. I mainly was with the family during the summers.
And involved in all the sporting activities that you mentioned.
Yes.
So as you're getting ready to finish high school, how did you decide about where to go to college?
I wanted to stay south, and I wanted to be at not a real big university. And I grew up knowing about Vanderbilt and the size of Vanderbilt, and had actually been on campus a lot through the sporting events. And my senior in high school, I started dating my later to be husband. He went to my senior prom with me, Bob Moses. But so I liked that. And I also had a couple of friends who were older than I and older than I was, and they had gone to Tulane University. So I chose to go to Tulane as well. So I loved it. So it was Newcomb University, Newcomb College of Tulane University.
And I think at that time, Sophie Newcomb was mostly women, but it has since blended into Tulane. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes. Newcomb was a college of women. They grouped the women in that college, the arts and science. Now the women could have been in the architecture program or in the engineering program. So they weren't limited to Newcomb, but the arts and science women were put into Newcomb College, but it was all Tulane University always.
And what did you decide as the major?
My major was psychology and with a minor in Spanish.
Why did you pick psychology?
The mental health part intrigued me. Understanding why people do what they do and what made people healthy and not healthy and the diagnoses and the depression. And so I was very interested in knowing about that. And I really liked psychology, so much so that I went from psychology to social work as a graduate student. So I got a master's in social work.
You actually went through college rather quickly,
I did. I graduated in 3 years.
and then you decided to go on and get your master's. Is that right?
Yes, but I had known when I was pushing to go through in 3 years that I wanted to go to graduate school. So that's the reason I figured I might as well go ahead and just load up on the courses. And then I could graduate in 3 years and then start pursuing my master's. And actually, I went to summer school at Vanderbilt for 2 summers during the summer.
Well, it sounds as though you were really busy. Did you have any extracurricular activities while you were in college?
I was in a sorority, and so that was consuming.
Um, and I think during this time you had mentioned Bob Moses.
Yes.
What role did he play in your life while you were in college?
Well, so we started dating when I was a senior in high school, and then he continued to finish up at Vanderbilt. He was in the engineering program, so he finished at Vanderbilt. And then but we continued to date all during my 3 years. And then on the graduation that June, well, actually that May when I graduated, we got married the June of that year. So that was June 25th, 1972. And so that's when we got married. And then he came to Tulane to get his business degree. He got his MBA at the same time I was getting my MSW, Master's in Social Work.
I think you said that not only did you have a position in a sorority, but you became a community leader at the campus.
Well, what I did was in the sorority, after you graduate, you can't be in the sorority any longer. But then I became a senior advisor or sorority leader my 4th year so that I could still be involved with my friends, but as the leader as opposed to being a member.
It is, I think, fortunate that you met Bob when you did, because you two had a very strong marriage for a very long time. But tell the story about how you all actually met.
Yes. So I was a senior in high school, as I said, and I was at a fraternity party at Vanderbilt, his fraternity actually, and I had a date with a freshman. And the freshman got drunk and passed out. And then Bob came over and started talking to me. And actually, the freshman had borrowed my car because freshmen weren't allowed to have cars. And obviously, he couldn't take me home that night because he was not in very good shape. So Bob was able to take me home, and then he asked me out the next weekend. But he checked with the freshman to make sure it was okay, and he got permission, and then we started dating thereafter.
Who were some of your favorite professors in college? I think you said
Louis Martorell. He was in graduate school.
Oh, sorry.
He was in the
You went so fast, it's almost like you compacted it 4 years. You managed to get 4.5 years and get a undergraduate and a graduate degree.
Right. So Mr. Martorell was my social work field instructor. So we would meet weekly, and it was kind of like sensitivity training and talk about, what was going on in our lives. And he'd introduce various group techniques to us. And at some point, he decided that I was never going to work. And he questioned me as to why I was even getting a social work degree. And that I couldn't convince him that, in fact, I really would be working. But I proved him wrong.
You did. There were 2 times, I think you said you took some courses at Vanderbilt.
Yes.
And you had 2 memorable professors there.
Yes.
Tell us a
I
little bit about
had,
that.
I had Miss Popovich, Professor Popovich, and I had Professor Locks. And
And-
Popovich taught me art history and Locks taught me philosophy. And I loved both of those courses and both of those professors.
And they seem to blend very nicely, art history and philosophy.
Yes,
And they both have sterling reputations at Vanderbilt.
I was fortunate to have them. They were excellent.
What kind of study habits did you have while you were working on your BA and your master's?
I studied a lot in college. I wanted to do well and things didn't come easy for me, so I needed to study. Social work graduate school came easy for me because it just made sense. And I guess with my psychology background, so that was not difficult. But I did go to the library and I did study.
As you are wrapping up your master's degree, what were the next steps that you were thinking of taking?
I needed to decide what I wanted to do as a career and where I wanted to live. And a family is very important to me, and I wanted to be with my family in Nashville. And Bob at the time was used to Vanderbilt, knew Vanderbilt, did not want to go back to Cleveland, Ohio, where he lived. And so he was able to work with my grandfather in the wine and liquor distributorship. So I wanted to come back to Nashville and get a social work job. And I was fortunate to have two of my family members who, one was my aunt and one was a cousin, who were very instrumental in my life and in my career plans
Who were
because
they?
they were active social workers. One was Annette Eskin and the other was Susie Morris. And Susie Morris at the time was a board member at the Dede Wallace Center, which was the community mental health center in Nashville. It's now Centerstone, but at the time it was Dede Wallace. And so I was able to come back and get a job at the drug treatment facility. And
What did you experience there as far as the work environment?
we worked hard with people who had addiction. And it was, at the time, the thought was if you put people on methadone, they could get off of heroin. And so we gave people methadone, meaning the doctor would.
Now, what time
dispense it.
period is this? Just to kind of
It was in 1973.
three.
Exactly. And I was there for 8 years.
And how did you find that experience?
It was a great background. I liked working with my colleagues and I liked practicing social work. I liked helping people. I was able to do not only the hands-on counseling, but also administration work. And I was also able to do clinical work with the Tennessee social work program. So I was a supervisor for students who were doing field work at the Dede Wallace Drug Treatment Center.
As you were working there, and you were having this career development that you just mentioned, what was it that led you to law school?
At the time, I realized that I really was going to work during my life because I enjoy working and did at the time, and knew that I would want to have a career that would last, that I would enjoy my lifetime. And so I was ambitious and wanted to get ahead. And my thought process at the time was, do I want to go back to school and get a PhD in social work? Or might I want to go to law school?
Had you had any experience with the courts?
Well, yes. I didn't have lawyers in my family, but I did have experience with the courts. And the way I got experience with the courts was through my work with the drug addicts who were in criminal trouble. So they would get in criminal trouble, potentially ask for probation or be on probation, and their lawyers would subpoena me to court to go and testify on their behalf that they were in compliance with the treatment program. And that was necessary for them to either get on probation or stay on probation. And it was a factor that the courts could consider in determining what the criminal's future was going to be. So in doing that, I realized that the impact of courts was so much more than the impact that I was having in the office with the counseling, that I could actually effectuate change and make things happen instead of just talking about it. So at that point, I thought, okay, I want to go to law school, and then I can decide beyond that time how I would like to use my law degree. But I was already at that time thinking about, I'd really like to do family law. So that was my plan.
And how did you implement it? You had to go to law school, but you were a working social worker. You were
Yes,
busy. So
I
what
was
did you
working
do?
full time. And I didn't want my parents to have to pay for graduate school, for law school at that point. I was married. We were independent. My husband was working in the wholesale wine and liquor distributorship. I was working at Dede Wallace, and I knew about the Nashville School of Law, which seemed to be perfect because I could continue working, my husband could continue working, and I could go to law school. But along those lines, I thought about, okay, well, if I'm working all day and going to law school in the evenings and studying on the weekends, that's not going to work very well for my marriage. So I decided that in order to keep my marriage together and to be with my husband, that he needed to come to law school with me as well. So poor Bob agreed to go. And he said, okay, well, I'll try it. And at that time, we were able to pay tuition every month. So you didn't have to commit to a yearly tuition. You could do it monthly. And so we would pay for each month. And time went on and years went by. And finally, it occurred to him that he was so far committed into going to law school with me that he might as well continue to go. And he took the bar, and we took the bar, and he passed it. And he got his law degree as well as me after the 4 years, which was the time it took to get through the law school.
Well, tell me about some of the courses that you took and some of the professors that you thought were really important.
Civil procedure was my favorite course. It was with Doug Fisher, and he was a great professor. Judge Murphy taught tort, so that was fun. I enjoyed Harris Gilbert. He was a really good teacher.
And secure
And
transactions.
secure transactions. And those were probably
Joe
my
Martin,
best. Joe Martin taught
UCC.
UCC, and bless his heart, he was a good teacher, but he talked in codes, and it was challenging, but I was able to get through it. So that was good. He knew it so well. He knew the code sections in his brain and would talk to us about the code sections as he was lecturing us.
Well, it was a pretty recent development at that time to have
Yes.
the Uniform Commercial Code. So I think you were fortunate to have Joe Martin. Well, who were some of your friends besides your husband? Who were some of your friends in law school?
Steve Carr, Jim Austin, Suzanne Mossman, who's now Schulman,
And they
Tom
became,
Lawless.
were these your study mates?
Jim and Steve Carr were.
And Bob.
Yes, and Bob, the four of us, we had a study group.
Well, as you are working your way through social work and law school, did you and Bob talk about starting a family?
We did. So after the third year, it became apparent that we can get this done. You know, it's sort of an endurance race. It's just, can you just keep going longer to get through this? And we decided that we could. And we decided we wanted to go ahead and start the family. And it was important for me to go ahead and start the family because I had figured at that point I was going to change careers. And if I changed careers, I didn't want to start a family or soon thereafter changing careers, because I just didn't think that would go over well. So we decided to try to get pregnant and have a child, and we did. So the 4th year I was pregnant in law school.
How did that affect the bar exam?
Well, it was hard. It was really hard.
And I think you said in February you were able to take the bar passed, and then you decided to do what?
Start working in law.
And what was your first steps as far as getting started in practicing?
One of the people who had subpoenaed me to court to testify on behalf of his criminal clients was Arnold Peoples. So my first career job in terms of ability to work as a lawyer was with Arnold Peoples, and he was willing to have me come in and help him with cases and ultimately work my own cases. And Mariah Wooten was in the office at the time, and so that was awesome. And Mike Engel, and they were great lawyers and great role models.
Before we venture down the development of your legal career, I want to take a moment, though, to ask you about your family. We've talked about how you met Bob. We know that he is also a lawyer too,
Yes,
passed the bar. And you just mentioned Marissa as your first child.
yes,
How many children do you have?
3. So Marissa's the oldest, so she went to law school with me the 4th year.
Little did she know.
Little did she know that she would end up going to law school on her own.
And is she
And
married?
she's married, and her husband's a lawyer, Ben Russ.
And how many children do they have?
They have 2 children, Eli, who's 16, and Miriam, who's about to be 15. And Marissa has been my law partner for the past 18 years.
How wonderful.
And 2 years before that, she was working at the firm where we ultimately merged, which is Gullett, Sanford, Robinson, and Martin. And no coincidence that Martin is the Joe Martin, whose class was so hard when I took UCC, and I'm now in his firm.
And you have 2 more children.
Yes. So I have Caroline Moses Sprouse, and I have Ryan Manuel Moses.
And Caroline is married to
Lee Sprouse, who also is an attorney, but he did criminal defense work, as does Ben, but he ended up going to work for the family business. So he is running the warehouse, actually. He's in charge of the operations of the business.
And they have any children?
They have 2 children, Al and Amelia.
And 1 son? You have a son?
Ryan Manuel Moses, and Ryan is working in the business as well. He's running it now with my brother, and he's also developing commercial real estate and is very active in the community and active, very active volunteer.
And they have any children?
They have 2 children. They have Hadley and they have Reed.
Okay.
So I have 3 granddaughters and 3 grandsons. And everybody lives 5 minutes from me. I'm very lucky.
You are so lucky.
Yes.
Would you recommend the law as a career to any of them? Obviously, they saw an example in you. So,
well, I would. I know some of my colleagues clearly would not, but it has been a wonderful career path for me. I have loved learning the law. It's been useful in my life, and it's been very useful in, not only in making me smarter about how I operate in my life, but just in terms of the connections and the networking that I've had and the satisfaction that I've gotten from being able to help people at very important times in their lives.
I don't want to overlook any of your family members. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I do. I have 2 brothers. And one is the one that I referenced, Seth Eskin, who is running the Best Brands, the wholesale wine and liquor distributorship.
And he's married?
He's married and has 2 sons.
Okay. And then your other brother?
And then my other brother, Lon Eskin, is a physician, a surgeon. He's a transplant surgeon in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he's married and has 3 children.
Now he's a little bit younger than you.
He is. He's 12 years younger than me. Lon is, and Seth is 7 years younger than me.
Okay, so your parents thought about it before they had children.
They
would
did.
think about it, and then they decide they liked it and they do it again.
They did.
All right, now let's go talk about your career as a lawyer.
Yes.
That's really the part where you were talking about going with Arnold Peebles.
Yes.
Give a little description of Arnold Peebles.
Very colorful. He was a tremendous trial lawyer. He was very flamboyant. He was very kind and generous. He had some personal issues himself with some addiction issues, but he was able to get on top of those to his credit. And he was really a very colorful figure amongst the bar.
So when you went to work in his office, did you do criminal work?
I did a little bit, but
What did you discover?
well, while I liked that practice, I wasn't very good with dealing with people who wouldn't do what they told me they were going to do. They wouldn't show up. They wouldn't bring their witnesses. They wouldn't help them. And so it was difficult for me to figure out how I was supposed to do my best job when they wouldn't work with me. So it was not the best practice in terms of the fit. I was used to, in counseling, having people really engage and work hard. And a lot of times they wouldn't do that. And it's like, this isn't going to work. But I also knew I wanted to do family law as well.
So how long
it wasn't
did
a
you
surprise.
How long did you stay with Arnold before you branched out?
It was just probably a couple of years.
Okay. And then what did you do after that?
Then I went and I joined Dan Eisenstein. Well, actually, that's not right. I went
Jude Lenihan.
Jude Lanahan, yes. So with Jude Lanahan and Jim Austin, who was in my study group, he was part of that group, and Charlie Williams and Philip Miller. It was a great group of lawyers.
Advocates, yes.
Yes. So I was able to join them in the American Trust Building. And I was there for many years.
And you focused on family law.
I did.
They were more of the civil.
They did civil and Jude did criminal.
And Jude did do criminal.
Yes.
What did you discover as you focused on family law that either moved you forward or made you rethink?
I really liked practicing family law. I was able to bring my counseling skills together with my legal skills and was able to realize that I could help people both in the courts, but also in analyzing their situations and helping them sort through what they really wanted and what would be in their best interest. And it was very, very rewarding because people with family law issues would just oftentimes really be struggling. I mean, even if they would made decisions that they wanted to change, the change is hard, and change is really hard when it involves family members. So making a difference and helping people get from a very difficult place to a place of more comfort and more understanding was amazing to me, that I could be a part of people's travel.
I think that you told me you graduated from law school in 1980.
Yes.
And then you worked for Arnold Peebles for 2 years.
Yes.
And you were with Dan Eisenstein and Jude and Philip.
Well, Dan later. So
Okay.
Dan was after the group with Lanahan and Miller and Williams.
Austin.
Yes, and Austin.
So this is probably the mid-80s that
Yes.
you are with that group. And then about 1989 or so, you left and went with Dan Eisenstein.
Yes. And it was Foley, Baltz,
Richard
Eisenstein. Yes.
And Peter Weiss.
Peter Weiss.
He was in my class in law school.
Yes. Great lawyers.
Great guy.
Jack Foley.
Mhm.
So it was another great group of lawyers.
Do you remember at that time, if you were in family practice, who were the judges that you would typically go before?
Yeah, it was Muriel Robinson, and James Everett.
And tell me a little bit about them.
They were both very dedicated, did really good work. You would know what would likely occur because they worked hard to be consistent, and they worked hard to be consistent together. So it was really a good time to be practicing family law because they just handled it so competently and capably.
Had you ever experienced being in Benson Trimble's court?
I was there, but very briefly. So I've heard tales, but not ones that I experienced personally.
But Muriel was a new day in domestic relations.
That's what I understand. And she worked hard to create the new day. Yes.
First woman in that court.
Right.
And she really enforced the provisions with regards to child support and visitation. And she had a saying that you mentioned to me.
Yes. So you say what you mean and mean what you say. And she would have people live up to that. And if they didn't, she'd put them in jail. If people didn't pay their child support or didn't have the parenting time, at that time it was called visitation, she'd put them in jail. And people were fearful of her, the litigants, in that they knew she wasn't going to mess around. They either followed her orders or they were going to be in trouble.
And she had a dress code.
She did. We couldn't wear pants initially as women in court. And then she eased up on that. You couldn't wear culottes, couldn't wear shorts.
Clients had to come dressed, no t-shirts, no sleeveless undershirts.
That's correct.
During that time in your life, did you become involved in any of the legal bar associations?
I did. I wanted to become involved professionally, and I wanted to make a contribution to the professional organizations. So I joined LAW, the Nashville Bar Association, the American Bar Association. I wanted to be active and make a difference.
And I think you did. You actually became involved in the administration of those organizations.
I did. I was past president of Lawyers Association for Women, and I was involved in the National Bar Association. I've been a first vice president, and a second go round on the board, I became second vice president. So I've served the National Bar Association twice.
Tell me a little bit about your daily routines when you got into practicing domestic relations. What would you say your day was like?
Well, of course, at some point along the way, I had the 3 children. So I had the one child in law school, Marissa, and then I had Caroline and Ryan while I was practicing. So working out was important to me. So I'd set an early alarm depending on what I had going that day. It would either be a 3 o'clock alarm or a 5 o'clock alarm. And 3 o'clock would be if I have to get ready for a hearing or a trial, because I like to cram it all in my brain the morning of, so it's there and it's fresh. 5 o'clock would be if I didn't have to go to court or do some sort of hearing and I could just work out. And then I would be dressed and ready so that I could then take the children to school. We had hookups at that point, which are carpools to some, but hookups. And so we'd pick up the children in the neighborhoods and get the children to school. My 3 went to Harding Academy. And then Harpeth Hall, MBA.
And I think
Hillsborough.
You were telling me a little while back that before they started school, there were times when, even when they were young, you were still having to take care of them as babies on your way to work, whether it was nursing or pumping.
Yes. Well, I nursed each one of them for a year, so I did a lot of pumping. And I had full-time live-in help when I was in law school because I needed that, because I was working in the day and going to law school in the nighttime, but pumping along the way. And so, and I had that with all the three children until they were able to start their preschools.
Do you still keep those early hours?
Not as much. I'm 5 o'clock. I'm rarely 3 o'clock, sometimes, but 5 o'clock is my routine.
And what time would you usually leave work?
It depends. It, a lot of times it's 6 or 7, but depending, if I finished, I might could leave earlier. So, but generally that's about the routine.
And Bob was always there to help.
Yes, absolutely. And the way we were able to manage the children at the time, and I didn't stay that late when I had the children at home. So I would be home for dinner because dinner was an important time for all of us. That's what I'm doing now that I don't have children at home, but I was home for dinner. And I would put the children's important events at the beginning of the year into my calendar. We had paper calendars. Each child would have a different color. And then I would know where I had to be when and get hookups together and that sort of thing. But, I tried to be at their extracurricular activities. I had volleyball, baseball, basketball, dancing. They did a lot. And so I tried to work that into my calendar so that I could be there. But absolutely, Bob did a lot to help, and he had a lot of freedom and ability to do that and willingly did it. He was a great dad.
And you were highly organized in order to keep all those balls in the air.
Well, I tried to be because it did help.
Right. Well, as your career was developing and evolving, those are a few of the things that you did in your personal life. What practice specialty did you develop?
The family law. So I was able to concentrate on family law. And ultimately, as you work in a field and you develop, I would say an expertise, but develop the knowledge in the field, and you create a client base and you work in the community, people know what you do and referrals start coming in, which they did.
Did you get involved in legislation of any sort?
Somewhat, but I was more involved in the bar organizations and the continuing legal education.
And what changes did you see? I think you mentioned like child support guidelines.
Yes.
And what we would call a visitation schedule is now a parenting plan.
Yes.
What other changes did you notice?
Parenting time. Well, mediation came to be. Ultimately, it became mandatory, but there was not alternative dispute resolution before when I first started practicing. But we lawyers would get together and try to settle cases. We didn't have a mediator with us, but we would try to do it by negotiations. So, but now, of course, mediation is part of the law. It's required before we can go to trial. So that's a difference.
You mentioned the shift in alimony too.
Yes.
It used to be mostly alimony for life or for part of a number of years. How has that changed?
Well, with women's movement and women's rights, women now are expected to work in addition to men working. Before, you had sort of the traditional model, which was the men were the breadwinners and the women stayed home and raised the babies. And certainly not in all cases, but the majority of the time. And the fathers had every other weekend from Friday to Sunday and alternating holidays. And that's pretty much your standard. Maybe on the off week, they'd have a dinner or something. But fathers wanted more rights and pushed for that and involved themselves in legislation and legislation efforts. And so they have gotten more rights. And the equality of men and women has come into play, and it's affected the laws. And the truth of the matter is now, if I gave you a set of facts, you couldn't tell me if it was about a man or a woman, because people are playing all roles that used to be traditionally for one gender. It's not any longer.
And how did you see your experience as a social worker playing into all these changes?
I am aware of people and their roles and their feelings. And so for stay-at-home women to have the husbands all of a sudden want to play the roles that they've played, it was hard for them to understand why that's okay all of a sudden. So that was a change for the stay-at-home women, or even the working women, when they oftentimes did the roles and now the men want to take over the roles. That was hard. The men didn't understand why the women wouldn't let them have the roles in some instances, and when they wanted to play those roles. So there were changes in people's rights and responsibilities in respect to their children. That was one example of social work and how the counseling comes into play, and understanding what's going on with people and their thought processes and their lives.
And this change in family law led you to become more active in the organizations focused on family law.
It did.
And what were some of those organizations?
There are some. When I got so much out of being a member of Lawyers Association for Women, National Bar Association, and the American Bar Association, I wanted to continue my work in organizations and look to see what the premier family law organizations are, one of which is the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, and I wanted to be a member of that organization.
With AAML, you have to be nominated and you have to pass some type of a proficiency or sufficient knowledge of what it is that this organization is focused on. Is that right?
Yes, you can apply, but
okay.
then there's a screening process where you have to be screened. It's a extensive application process, and then you have to have an oral examination and a written examination.
Now, when did you do this?
I've been a member for probably 30 years now.
Oh my, back in the 90s.
Yes.
That must have been in its formative years.
It was.
And who were the people that either nominated you or supported you in your efforts?
Well, John Hollins Sr.
Right.
and Lou Connor, they were members at the time when I was applying, and they supported my application.
And Amy M.
Amy Munson came after me.
Oh, okay.
Way after me, many years
She's
later.
a member now.
She's a member.
Who was George Stern?
George Stern was a member from Atlanta. So he was practicing law in Atlanta. And the reason he was important is George was initially in my life as my Hebrew school teacher when I was before my bat mitzvah. So when I was in grade school and going to Sunday school at the West End Synagogue, he was my Hebrew school teacher, and I adored him. He taught me Hebrew. I can still read Hebrew because of George Stern. So when it came time for my oral examination, there was not somebody here, even though John and Lou were members. They wanted me to go and interview with an attorney in Atlanta. So I said, that's fine. I'm happy to go anywhere to try to become a member. So I get the paperwork back and I'm told to go and meet with George Stern. And I just thought, what's the likelihood that this George Stern is my George Stern from my Hebrew class? Well, as it turns out, it was. And so before he starts examining me about whether I'm competent and capable to be a member of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, we caught up on his life in Nashville and our life together when he was my teacher. And his mother at the time was alive and living in Nashville still. So it was old home week with him. He ended up being my mentor in the organization, and he was president. And when he was president, he had me be the membership chair. And that's when I first got involved with the executive committee. And it's because of him that I was able to move through the ranks with the American Academy.
Which led to what?
Ultimately, I was president of the organization.
And is there another?
That was in 2010.
in 2010, you were the president
I was the
of the
president.
AAML.
Yes.
Was there another organization that focused on family law that was more comprehensive than Nashville or Tennessee?
Well, the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers is for our country.
Right.
And there's another organization that's for the world, and that's the International Academy of Family Lawyers, which I also applied to join, and I was accepted, and I got involved heavily with that organization as well.
When you applied, was it as rigorous as the previous experience you'd had?
Well, you had to be a member of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers at the time. So you couldn't be in the IAFL without being a member of the AAML. So given that, then they had their own scrutiny, but it was making sure that you were an international family law practitioner and that you had the requisite experience. So you had to apply, and you had to then be scrutinized, and you had to have recommendations from lawyers and judges, the same as the American Academy. You had to have recommendations as well. So fortunately, I was able to join that organization also.
And that was in 1998?
Yes.
And what was your experience with that organization? You had a pretty rewarding experience with the AAML.
Yes.
Well,
Well, I was able to get involved. I knew lots of the fellows in the international who were from the United States. And then I was able to meet family law practitioners from all over the world, which was fabulous. And I was able to then get involved with the International Academy of Family Lawyers, first through committee work, and then ultimately on the executive committee, and then ultimately as president.
when were you the president?
That was probably 10 years ago.
Okay. And what did you do in that organization that was meaningful?
Actually, it was less than 10 years ago. It was probably 6 years ago.
Okay, somewhere around COVID?
Yes, during COVID.
That's a rough time to be the
It
president.
was a very rough time
Uh,
because part of the organization is meeting. We have meetings all over the world. And at that time, we had 3 meetings a year. And so when COVID hit, obviously you couldn't have meetings. So because we couldn't travel, we couldn't go anywhere. So my job was to cancel all the meetings and to do it with losing as little money as possible for the organization, and try to shift around so that we could have the meetings later whenever the COVID problem would be subsided, and so that we could travel again. So that was an issue. And another issue that arose when I was president is England changed its tax laws, and our administration was in England at the time. And what we had was people who worked for our organization that we classified as independent contractors. But when they changed their tax law, they were considered employees because they were under our direction, and being employees affected their status as to pay and benefits. And so we would have had to pay workers' compensation and would have had to pay lots of benefits for them that our organization couldn't have afforded to pay. So we had to stop that arrangement in England and hire other folks to work for our organization. And
outside of England?
outside of England. So we were able to do that. And so I called my presidency the Reign of Terror, because I had to cancel meetings and I had to change our administrative staff, whom we all loved but couldn't afford to keep by the laws of England. And they were happy to work with us, but none of us wanted to break the laws. So we were really stuck.
You must have done a very good job because they did honor you.
Well, they did, which was lovely.
You became the International Fellow of the Year.
Yes.
And that is selected by your peers in
Yes.
the organization?
which was lovely.
Well, after your experience of dealing with COVID and all of these circumstances that you classify as the reign of terror, it must have been a surprise.
It was a huge surprise, and they gave me a steel magnolia because they said that I was comparable to a steel magnolia, and that's what I have in my office now to commemorate
Well,
that, which
once
was lovely.
again, I think that experience probably called on your prior training as a social worker to deal with so many personnel issues and the cancellation of meetings and people's expectations.
It's true. We instituted Zooms monthly. And so people all over the world could participate in these Zooms. We had them for free so that we could all be together and learn together. And we had to come up with creative ways to be able to function. And we watched the Kentucky Derby together. We just would come up with different ideas about how we could continue to make the organization relevant and helpful and supportive. And we talk about how we were operating in our law offices during COVID and share those experiences and resources and learning about Zoom and the technologies and everything that we
Do you
could
still
do.
have those Zoom meetings? Maybe not as often.
We do, and not as often, but we absolutely do. Yes.
I think as you go through these experiences with the national and the international organizations, you were also being appointed or selected to have a role of participation in Tennessee, like with the Board of Law Examiners.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
That was wonderful.
And how did that come about?
Justice DeWoda asked me if I would do that. And he was terrific and a mentor of mine. And I said I'd be honored to do that. So I was on that board for probably 10 years, and I was president of that board along the way as well.
And then I think also the American College of Family Trial Lawyers.
Yes. So that group is about 100 of allegedly the best lawyers across the country. And you do have to be asked to join that organization. And we have a little less than 100 members right now. And each is really, there's virtually about 2 from each state. It's not exactly like that, but close. And again, you have to be asked, and it's a select group, and it's a wonderful group. And I've been honored to be able to serve on their executive committee as well. I'm secretary of the board.
That must be a big responsibility.
It is, but we meet once a year for a meeting, and then we have an executive committee meeting once a year. So it does not require a lot of me, frankly, on a day-to-day
basis.
schedule. Yeah.
Well, I think you said at some point you became a diplomat.
Yes, and that's what the members are called, diplomats of the American College of Family Trial Lawyers. With the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers and the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, we're called fellows. But for the American College of Family Trial Lawyers, we're called diplomats.
While those may not have been as time consuming, you also served on the Board of Professional Responsibility.
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, that was good work. That was interesting work, in that we evaluated claims against lawyers and as to whether they were legitimate claims or not. And not all complaints against lawyers are legitimate. Some are, the majority are not. So it's important to treat those that are not quickly and swiftly and release the lawyers. And those that are, those need to have good treatment as well, and proper action needs to be taken.
And how long did you serve on that board?
I was on that for several years too. I think it was 2 terms of 3 years each. I think it was a 6-year commitment.
That's a big commitment.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. But you also had other organizations in Nashville that you belonged to, which
Now the board of professional responsibility, it was the hearing committee.
It's the hearing committee.
Committees that I was on.
that's right.
Yes,
But I think you said there were civic organizations in Nashville that you belonged to.
yes, that
And
I've
they
been
were
involved
what?
with.
Which
I'm past president of Family and Children's Service, which is a great organization that's been in our community over 75 years, and it's been amazing.
and then your aunt you mentioned early on, Annette Eskin,
Yes,
played a role in that.
yeah, she's definitely involved in Family and Children's Service.
And then the Economic Club.
I'm a member of the Economic Club. I'm a member of Rotary. And I'm currently serving as board chair of the YWCA here in Nashville.
That's a big job.
That
And
is a big job.
In a volunteer
It's a
sense,
volunteer
it's
job.
a lot of work.
Yes.
And I think, although I thought I had asked you everything, you are a member of the International Academy of Collaborative Law.
Yes.
And what is different about that organization from the other ones that you've just described?
I am not in leadership in that organization, so I'm a member, which means I'm not responsible for the organization, but it's an international organization as well that's spreading the practice where lawyers work together in a collaborative setting so as to prevent litigation and try to resolve matters without court intervention along the way.
Do you see that expanding in the United States?
Yes.
You seem
And I think
cautious when you say
I think it's good for some cases, but not all cases. So I see it as being a very viable option in some cases, but I don't see it being appropriate in all cases.
I do understand that. What influence?
And the reason for that is because one of the requirements of collaborative law is that the lawyers cannot litigate. So the lawyers cannot use court for a resolution. And if the parties want to get out of collaborative law, they can hire new lawyers, but they can't stay with their continued lawyers. And the difficulty in some cases is that if you have somebody who's abusive and wants to abuse the collaborative process, they cannot agree and try to force some settlement that would not be proper for my client, for example. And I would not want my hands tied in that kind of situation where I couldn't get relief from my client and I'd have to abandon the process and have them hire somebody else. But when things are somewhat equal, when the power is somewhat equal, and there are cases where people can and want to
Collaborate.
work together, then that's fine.
And that probably is an area that works probably 20% of the time, maybe 25% of the time, you think?
I frankly don't know the statistics. I think it would depend on the locale and the lawyers and the parties.
I think all of those are critical factors.
Right.
What influence has the state bar had for you? I know you were a member of the family law section.
Yes, Tennessee Bar Association. Yes. I support the Tennessee Bar Association. They have a very active lobbying group.
Okay.
And there's a group that lobbies for our family law statutes as well. So they're critically important to make sure that our laws are in the best interest of families in Tennessee.
And did you play a role in its administration? Family law section?
Yes, I was chair of the Tennessee Bar Association Family Law Section.
Another section is the ADR section.
Yes.
And tell me your participation in that and what it is and what you've done.
Alternative dispute resolution. I've been involved in that. I've given seminars on mediation and arbitration and collaborative law, actually.
When you think of people who have played a significant role in the development of your career as a lawyer, who would you mention as those who had a strong influence on you?
Justice DeWoda, Charlie Warfield, he got me involved with the Legal Aid Society. And I was chair of that drive one year. And also Charlie got me involved with the Tennessee Historical Society. It's the preservation of the judiciary and the history of the judiciary, and Tennessee Supreme Court Historical Society, and I was president of that. And so he was important in my career. Dan Eisenstein was very important in my career. You actually have been important in my career. Carol McCoy gets accolades as well. You and I had the opportunity to work together many times, especially with one difficult case where we were both guardians. Lasted years. Conservators. I was the conservator for the wife, and you were the conservator for the husband, and we were married.
We were.
For years until we could sort out their estate. May they rest in peace.
My client had a decline while I was on a vacation in Hawaii. I do remember that I came back and found out that you had set up a trust and made me the trustee.
Yes. Perfectly appropriate.
Because the money did not need to go to your client.
That's true.
And
that's true.
It was wise, but it kept me tied into the process.
It was a lot.
You also said that some of these people who influenced you, like Judge Everett, there were lessons learned.
Yeah.
What was one of those lessons?
Judge Everett was such a good guy, and he tried to please everybody. And I think that led to his ultimate demise, in that he was, again, trying to help. And he made some bad decisions that hurt him in his career.
But he had been ruling on a case in which you were involved, you told me about. And as he ruled for your client, you felt the need to say a little bit more, and then the court officer came over.
Yes. So early on in my career, I was in Judge Everett's court. And I was all prepared. I probably had a 3 o'clock morning, and I was all prepared for everything I wanted to say about the case. And Judge Everett was familiar with it, had known about it, had read the pleadings, and was ready to rule. And in fact, I said just a little bit, and he told me how he was going to rule. And instead of saying, "Thank you, Your Honor," and sitting down, I kept going and told him everything that I had crammed into my brain at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he continued to rule with me at the end of it. But the court officer, in his wisdom, followed me out of the courtroom, and he said, "Marlene, when the judge has ruled for you, you need to shut up and sit down." And he said it very respectfully. But that is a really hard lesson for a lawyer who is prepared and wants to tell his or her story and not be able to, because you're cut off. But the lesson learned is that when you're winning, you need to be quiet, and you need to just say, "Thank you, Your Honor," and sit down. If you're losing, it's a different matter. But when you've won already, the only thing you can do is mess it up. You can't make it any better.
Well, there are several people who have played roles in your life, and you mentioned them, 2 who became judges, and not only judges in Davidson County, but in domestic relations. Do you remember those 2 friends?
Oh, Judge Robinson and Judge Smith, and very dear friends.
And not Muriel. What Robinson is this?
Yes, Philip Robinson.
And
they're my contemporaries. So we had lots of cases against each other in the trenches before both of them rose to the bench.
And I believe that you mentioned Jim Martin.
Yes, Jim Martin was another dear friend. And
very active in family law too.
Yes, he and I had many cases against each other before he went to the bench.
That's right. And I think Mike Binkley.
Yes, another good friend, same thing. Many cases before he went to the bench. And the 4 of them have been tremendous, have impacted my career and me on a personal level as friends. And I've always enjoyed being in front of each and every one of the 4, even when they've ruled against me. It's been for good cause.
I think Judge Phil Smith met an unfortunate health problem, died on the bench,
Yes,
or while he was on the bench. Philip Robinson is getting ready to retire.
yes,
And I don't know what he plans to do, but Jim Martin stepped down from the bench and went into mediation.
yes. And he is a great mediator, and I'm able to use him often. And that's been wonderful.
And what about Mike Binkley?
Same thing. He stepped down from the bench and is a mediator as well and does a great job. And I use him as well.
Tell me about any involvement that you have in politics.
I get involved in judicial races heavily because that's important. I mean, they're all important, but for my perspective, or from my perspective, I feel like I know the most about those races. And so I oftentimes help the candidates in their campaigns. And it's my pleasure to do that.
Do you have any role in legislation at this point in your specialty? Do you, through any of the organizations, help kind of craft the wording or anything like that?
I've not been involved in the legislative committee, although I'll give them ideas, but I'm not personally going to the legislature.
Tell me what changes you've observed in office procedures and technology during your career.
Well, it's been massive because, when we first started practicing, we had carbon paper. And so to get a copy, you would use carbon paper on your typewriter, and your secretary would type it for you. And then we would dictate, and the secretary would type that. We don't even have secretaries anymore. We have legal assistants, and people are generating their own documents. And now they're generating their documents through artificial intelligence and then reviewing those as well. So it has changed substantially. And the fax machine came to be, and text messages came to be. So the cell phones. And so there's continued access to your lawyer and to your clients.
What have you heard recently about lawyers using AI?
AI is a great technology. It's a great assistant. And if you treat it as a legal assistant, then that's a good thing. You have to be very careful about confidentiality and not putting in names and not disclosing information, because it's out there in the universe and it's discoverable. And it could be a breach of confidentiality, a breach of your fiduciary duty if you disclose information to the worldwide internet. But if you use it as an assistant and just ask it to do tasks, it's excellent. But then when the tasks come back, it's not a final product. It's a task. It's a product from your assistant, which means you have to review it carefully and closely. You have to review the citations. You have to review the conclusions. You have to make sure that it's accurate. So it's a start, but it's not a finish.
I want to take you back a little bit to the law firm that you're with, the law firms that you were with, and how that has also developed. You have mentioned some of this briefly in your conversation today, but when you first went to the law firm with fellows that took you in for 4 or 5 years, and you were doing primarily family law, how did you, I think you now are with Gullett Sanford, and you said a few years ago you had been with Moses, Townsend, and Russ.
Yes.
Tell me the development of the law firms that you were with and how those changes came about.
Yeah, so I was with Arnold Peebles, and then I moved in with Foley. Well, no, then I moved in with Philip Miller, Charlie Williams, Jude Lanahan. It was an associate, and Jim Austin. It was an association of attorneys.
Was that in East Nashville?
No, that was in the American Trust building.
American
so I've
Trust.
always
Okay.
been, when I was with Arnold Peebles, it was on Gay Street. So I've always been close to the courthouse. So this was the American Trust building. And then I moved into Second Avenue with the Foley Weiss, Baltz and Eisenstein group. And then from there, I decided when Dane Eisenstein went on the bench and left our practice, that's when I decided, okay, I just need to establish my own family law practice in my own location, at which point I bought a building at 23rd Avenue North, 205 23rd Avenue North. And that's where I started the practice of, actually, at first it was Moses and Townsend, and then it became Moses, Townsend and Russ, and then it evolved to MTR Family Law. Townsend retired. She had twins and retired. And so then Marissa joined me, my daughter, and it became MTR Family
Tell me a
Law.
little bit about practicing with your daughter. What is that like?
Well, she's a great lawyer and has really good intuition and good insight and good networking and just does a great job. So pretty much I kind of listen to her and see what she has to say. And for the most part, she's right. And so I agree with her. There are rare occasions when I don't, but for the most part, she's spot on and has great ideas and brings great strength to the practice. And she does a great job as an advocate as well.
And she has her own group of clients, and you have your own group of clients.
Yes.
You don't work together on cases.
On occasion, but for the most part, she's busy with her referrals and I'm busy with my referrals. And so that works out great.
Early on, she might have come to you for more assistance than after the first year or two. She's
right. Early on, it was my cases because people didn't know her from the
and how
family
long
law
was it
arena.
that you all practiced together before you made another move?
Well, we were together for 15 years at the office. We were first on Second Avenue, and then she moved with me when I bought the office building. She actually was the impetus for having me move, because I used to think that if you were a lawyer, you had to be downtown, because that's what we thought. We had to be by the courthouse. We were all downtown.
Right.
And she said, no, you don't have to be downtown. You can be elsewhere. And so that's when I bought the building and we moved to 23rd Avenue. But from there, we merged with Gullett, Sanford, Robinson, and Martin.
How did that come about?
Well, Marissa had worked for Gullett, Sanford, Robinson, and Martin when she was in law school. She was a summer intern for 2 years. And they recruited her actually out of law school. And
now,
then
where did she go to law school?
She went to the University of Tennessee.
Okay.
In Knoxville. And so she was here with Gullett for 2 summers, and they recruited her as an associate, and she worked in the litigation practice under Scott Derrick, who was a great mentor to her. And so she was there in the litigation section for 2 years, and she liked it a lot and was learning a lot and loved the lawyers at Gullett, but wanted more hands-on work with people. And so she approached me and said, Mom, can I come work with you in family law? I said, you can. I said, but, be careful what you ask for. And if you're not happy, don't feel like you have to be here or stay with me or any of that, because I want you to do
That's a risk.
Right. I want you to do what's going to make you happy. And so she came over, and it was a huge sea change to go from business litigation to family law. Family lawyers act different than business litigation lawyers, but she's been with me 18 years and has been practicing law for 20.
That is a very good outcome of a situation that could be a little too close.
That's true. That's true.
As you have been talking about your family and brothers and your children, you are a remarkable family, because most everyone is still in Nashville.
It's true. I have a large extended family, not only my first, my immediate family, but the extended families here in Nashville.
It's a great network. Let me ask you about your recollection of judges and what you have learned from these observations of them, like trial strategies. What you want to do.
What I've learned is that judges want to do the best they can do. And it's up to us as lawyers to equip them to be able to do that. And when we're analyzing cases, we need to think about how it's going to fall upon the ears and the sensitivity of our judges. So we need to bring it before them, following the law, making sure that we're bringing the statutory components together to them, following the case law, putting it all together in a neat little package, being clear what we're asking of them, and then giving them the resolution that we see. So giving them a potential outcome so that we've done it all for them, have all the documents prepared, all the proposed orders, the briefs, the memorandums, so that they are prepared to make the ruling, hopefully in our favor.
And as you are doing that, you have to work with your client. You want to present more of a story to the court.
Yes.
And you need to have your client understand that that's the way it's going to be approached.
Clearly.
Yeah.
So what's important with the clients is from the very first meeting to help them understand what you can and can't do. They need to have a realistic understanding of the process and where they stand in it and what they can do to facilitate it, make it better, and what they have done in the past that are going to be obstacles for them, so that they really know how they stand and what they need to do to improve upon their existing stance.
And I think when we spoke earlier, you talked about how important it is that if you evaluate a case and you think there are areas that you might lose, and what impact that would have, how do you deal with that both with your client and being in court?
Well, if I know we've got a losing argument,
Mhm.
then I will let them know that. If the court more than likely is not going to rule in our favor, then we got to figure out a way to get a result not in court. Whether that be the clients talk to each other, or the client's lawyers talk to each other, or you go to mediation, or you have somebody evaluate the case separately, get other opinions, or do something, because court's not always the answer. It's an answer, but it's not the only answer. And if you're going to lose, you need not to waste your time, your energy, your client's money going there. You need to be realistic, both in the assessment and what you're asking a court to do. And I don't think it helps anybody if you go to court and know you're going to lose.
And I think you also said some of the trial strategies or steps that you take is to ascertain what are the goals that your client wants. And this is true whether it's family law or any lawsuit. What are the goals that these people are trying to achieve? And how do you deal with their expectations and how to get to those goals? Maybe not fully complete it, but what do you tell your clients?
I have an intake form that collects specific data when I'm interviewing a client. One of the sheets in that intake form is their goals. So after I gather the information that I need, and after I've talked about the law in Tennessee and how their situation might fall in Tennessee, I'll ask them what their goals are, and they may or may not know their goals, and goals change. And I'll say, your goals may change along the way, but as we sit today, what is it you would like to accomplish? So that I'm clear about where they're going and what they want. And I ask them, how can I help you with your goals? They may just be coming in to consult, or they may want me to handle their case into the future. So knowing their goals is important, because you can shape your strategy around their goals and figure out how you're going to accomplish them, and keeping my sight on their goal and their sight on their goal, because sometimes you get lost in the process and you have to be focused so that you can remember what's important and figure out how to get there.
When we're talking about these trial strategies, they also ask about business practices, and you mentioned one, the questionnaire that you have. What are some of the other business practices that you've instituted?
When they come in, I've got a packet of information for them. So I have a divorce information sheet. I have the statutory injunction in there. I have the insurance form in there. I have the statutes that deal with the case law, well, the statutory law. So I have the equitable division statute. I have the alimony statute. I have the parenting plan statute. I have a parenting plan. I have a list of resources for the parenting class that's required now, a 4-hour class. I have in there helpful hints about how to maneuver in a divorce case. I have information about what I need in a custody case. I have information about the financial information. I have a packet of information to fill in about what the financial aspects are in the case. So all of that is in their packet and they get it upon the initial interview.
And what are some of the steps that you take as a business professional to be sure that the costs are paid and the client understands what their obligations are?
When they retain me, I always have a contract. So it's a written contract. There's a retainer fee that's expected. And before I begin involvement in the case, other than the consultation, I want to have the retainer paid and the contract signed by the client, a guarantor if necessary, and by me.
What's this term that you used, evergreen contract?
Yes, that's when the retainer gets low. Then our staff will ask them to replenish the retainer so that finances are not a problem in the case, and so that we don't have huge balance at the end of the case, and so that the clients are aware monthly where they stand. So the billing comes out monthly, and then the replenish would be as a function of needing more resources to be able to manage the case.
Another area that you mentioned were difficult clients.
Yes.
Tell me what your business practices there.
Well, people can be difficult for various reasons. And so it's important to understand what's the source of their difficulty. It could be anxiety, it could be fear, it could be finances, it could be pressure coming from other sources.
Not listening.
Not listening. And there's a difference, because those first ones that I mentioned are things that we could potentially deal with. You know, the not listening, you have to hit head on, and it's, you know, what you have to tell a client at some point is you're wasting your money if you're not going to follow my advice, because you're not putting yourself in a good situation, and it's making it more difficult and more costly for me to be able to help you. So that's important as well. But, you know, social work comes into that also, because people are going to have tough times and are going to feel stress and may lose it, so to speak, along the way. And, you know, I feel like my job is to help them regain their composure and their confidence and their hope and get beyond it.
What do you do when a client wants the firm to take some action that you may not want to be associated with?
I tell them very politely that I understand what they want. I'm not their person to do that, and they're welcome to go elsewhere to try to get what they want done. That I don't see that as being a productive way to move forward, and I don't want to be a part of it.
You had mentioned that to me, but I didn't ask you, how often does that happen?
It happens not that often, fortunately, but people may want me to take a position or file something that I think is going to hurt them as opposed to help them. And I don't want to be a part of that. You know, I don't want to contribute to their demise, and they have a right to have it filed. I have a right not to be the one filing it.
Shifting from business practices, tell me a little bit about counseling strategies. You have the background as a social worker. How do you use counseling strategies?
In depth, when I'm talking to a client and they're telling me what they want me to do, I want to make sure that that's in fact what they want me to do. And I want to steer them in a direction to make sure that what I'm getting ready to do, they completely understand, so that they may or may not want that done. For example, my belief in divorce cases is if people can work through it in an amicable way, it's better to start there. And so I'll start in the least adversive way that's possible under the circumstances. It may be that restraining orders are required and I've got to protect the person and their children right away, and it can't be an irreconcilable differences pleading. But if it can be, and if the people can work together, the lawyers on the other side, you know, I try to foster that. And I don't encourage people to take adverse positions just because they can, or to be ugly, or to be spiteful or vindictive. And sometimes people are feeling that way. And I'll question them about it. And I'll say, well, we can certainly do that, but how's that going to serve you in the long term? And you know, is that going to be productive for you as we move through the case?
I knew that as a social worker, you use it not only with your clients, but you told me that it helps you to understand the thought process of like every person involved in the proceedings, whether it's your client, the other lawyer, the other client, the judge. How have you used that experience of social work to figure that out?
Well, you understand what people's expectations are and how they function. So it could be that the lawyer on the other side doesn't want to be challenged or questioned or, you know, dealt with in a manner they don't think is worthy for them. And so you tread lightly and try to get them to agree with you by gently making suggestions or asking them what their suggestions are on the front end to try to reach agreements along the way. If somebody has to be right, whether it's the other side, for example, the other side, your client tells you always has to be right, and they, you know, insist upon it and don't want to be put in a negative light. So then in negotiating, you would give them a situation where they could win so that they're not challenged, and to sort it out so that you can let that opportunity happen, and to help them realize that it's going to benefit them while it's also benefiting your client. So being strategic about how you bring ideas forward
is important. You had talked about the thought process of the judge, and in this instance, in Davidson County, both of the sitting judges are people that you know.
Yes.
When you go to another county, how does that help you that you know the thought process of what the judges are going through?
Well, if I go to another county that I'm not familiar with the judge, I will check with local counsel and get a rundown so that I know what I'm going to face. You know, for me, I need to know whether it's a judge who immediately will go to shared parenting time, that their first thought is going to be that the parents need to have equal time and equal decision making. I need to know that before I go in and argue something different, or even if I'm going to argue that. So I need to know what their general stance is about things. I need to know what their history's been about awarding alimony, you know, property division.
Doing your research.
Yes, everything about the judge, to the extent that local lawyers have experience with them. So, and sometimes I actually hire local counsel, because I don't want to be a fish out of the water and take my Williamson County experience to another county that I don't really know what the experience is. So I find that very helpful. And I really will not go to another county without having somebody either coach
Oh.
me, but moreover, I like having local counsel. Even though I'm licensed in the whole state of Tennessee, it's not good enough.
It's not same all across the state.
Right.
I think that's true for any area of practice.
Yes,
You really do need to know the judge.
I agree.
Tell me how the corporate culture is passed down in the firm that you're in.
I'm very pleased to be at Gullett, Sanford, Robinson and Martin. When I was a young lawyer, that was a firm that I always held in high esteem. And it started with Joe Martin being in the firm. And then when I started practicing, Val Sanford was a leader in the Nashville Bar Association. It was very active in the annual meetings and would stand up with his loud voice and say, I move to dispense with the reading of the minutes. And I just thought, oh my gosh, he's amazing. He was on the Board of Law Examiners along the way. And so I was always impressed with him. I came to know later in my practice along the way, Jack Robinson, who is the author of the textbook in estate and trust, and is just a great guy. So I didn't really know B.B. Gullett, but so Gullett, so I know Sanford, not B.B. Gullett, but Sanford, Robinson, and Martin were all heroes of mine, and they were good citizens in the community. They were leaders in the bar. They were excellent lawyers. They were ethical. They were family members. They were all the qualities of what I thought was important, both professionally and personally. And Marissa and I actually thought about where she would work and wanted the right environment for her when she first started clerking, and Gullett was her choice and my choice. And so she had her connection to them. And then when we were practicing for all of the years, the managing partner, Phil Welty, was the lawyer at the time who had reached out to Marissa to come as a summer intern, because he was a young lawyer and his job was to recruit the summer intern. So it was Phil Welty who recruited Marissa. And then he came back to us as the managing partner to recruit our whole family law group to come and join Gullett. And I was pleased at that point to join because I had Scott Derrick there. I had Mark Westlake. I had Ray Busey. I had Wes Turner, all of whom were actually people with whom I worked, because in our boutique family law firm, we needed the people in the other areas of the law. So I would need to work with people in other law firms because we didn't have real estate. We didn't have estates and trust. We didn't have some of the areas that I needed, bankruptcy and rare occasion, but I needed the particular areas of expertise along with our family law expertise, because as you know, family law touches pretty much every area of the law. So to be able to be in a firm where they're just around the corner from me has been amazing. And, you know, all of my partners I'm enthralled with. I am very respectful of them and their talents and their capabilities, and they're all willing and desirous of helping us.
Good mentors.
Good mentors and good colleagues, because they are sharing our workload
And
in
so
a very
it
helpful
sounds
way.
as though this corporate culture that you have involves people who are leaders in the bar associations and their mutual respect for one another. It does sound as though that's pretty much the corporate culture.
Yes, and corporate community involvement. Yes, that tradition has been passed down to the other partners and the associates.
What steps have you taken with regards to business development and future planning? You're now been with this firm for a number of years, and it seems as though it's going quite well, but everyone is wise to think about business development and also what the future holds.
Yes. Well, fortunately, I continue to get lots of referrals from lots of sources, so that's terrific. But I'm also happy to share the clients and share the work. And so on each of my cases, I have another one of the lawyers and I have a paralegal, so that I'm involving them in the cases and exposing them to other lawyers, judges, the community. We hire experts, so the experts work with the team, and the goodwill is built amongst the team that goes out to the community, and word of mouth, we get more clients and they get more clients. So,
And how do you find new associates? How do you expand the practice?
well, one of the things that Marissa does amongst many is teaches at Belmont Law School. So she teaches the family law practicum and has for 10 years. So she's developing the trial practice for the young lawyers who want to learn about the practice of family law. And so the huge advantage there is she's been able to recruit the top students to come to our firm. So we have had successfully many Belmont graduates who are part of our practice, and it's been wonderful. So that's been a great source. We also have lots of connections in the community. For her, for Marissa, it's 5th generation. For me, it's 4th generation. And people will contact us about their family members, their friends, their relatives who are interested in family law. So it's actually harder getting a great paralegal than it is a great lawyer in this community.
I truly understand that.
Yes.
Because paralegal helps your life so much.
Right.
We really want to know, as we get closer to the end, about community activities and a career overview. And you've told me a lot about your participation in bar associations and some of the other organizations. How has your career had an impact on family life and social activities?
I really like lawyers, and I like networking with lawyers. I like the conversations with attorneys. And a lot of lawyers have become really close friends of mine. So it's not only a profession, but for me, it's also my social life. And when my husband and I went to law school together, we created a network of soon-to-be lawyers. So they're our friends and other friends. We've expanded upon that. Of course, I've had friends that I've kept with whom I've grown up in the community. And so I've had that as well. But my professional life has certainly extended into my personal life. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had being a lawyer.
Well, I think you've said it before that you didn't have a lawyer in the family when you went to law school, but now you have a number of
We
them.
have lots of lawyers in the family.
And that's had an impact on your family life because it's a blend of both what you do for work and the relationships that you have with your family members.
True.
What have been some of the rewards of having a legal career?
Having a law degree gives you sort of an elevated ability to maneuver in the world. And the legal profession has been looked up to historically. People with law degrees are considered professionals and people of integrity and honor. And when you have that, it's your responsibility to continue to make the profession be seen that way. So I've enjoyed the accolades that come with being a lawyer. And I think it's given me credibility that I don't think I would have had, frankly, as a social worker or maybe some other professional. I think because of the statute that comes with it. So I've enjoyed that, and it's given me opportunities not only in the organizations but in the communities, in my family, in my social circles. And my social circles have extended because of my professional organizations internationally. So I have friends across the country who are family law attorneys. I have friends internationally who are family law attorneys. I'm very active with all of them who are my friends because we're together many times a year at the professional meetings.
And you develop clients over time that have become friends.
Yes, yes, true.
You also mentioned that lawyers are seen as a part of the community, and you get asked to do a lot of things because you are a lawyer.
Yes, yes. And I appreciate that. And lawyers come with lots of skills typically, and they're very useful in boards and organizations.
Well, let's go to the other side, and that is the hardships and the pitfalls of being a lawyer. One of the things you mentioned was carrying other people's problems.
Yes.
And being accessible.
Yes.
And available. So that means you give up time you certainly give up your morning hours.
That's true. And sleepless nights, because of course you're worried about hearings, you're worried about your clients, you're figuring out what the next best step is and how to maneuver. And so it takes a lot of space in your brain. But it's good space. I've been doing it for 44 years now, and I'm used to dedicating that space. But I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't want to not have that opportunity. I see it as a privilege to practice law, and I see it as an honor and a responsibility. And even though there are pitfalls that, I've been anxious, I've been worried, I've been occupied, preoccupied, I've been taken away from times that I should have been with my family, children. Even still, it's a balancing act. When we're on family vacations, I have to be careful about not disappearing to go do my work instead of showing up for the family. So it's tricky, but I enjoy it all. And as I say, I'm lucky to be able to, I think, have it all.
That's a great way to end that, but I have one or two more questions. One is, could you briefly, and I don't know if it's possible, but could you briefly just say what the major contributions you feel you've made to society and legal history?
One of the things that I did with the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers when I was president was facilitate the creation of a pamphlet called What to Tell the Children. And the reason I did that is because a lot of times parents would come in and would be so distraught about their situations, but even more so than their own situation, it would be, what should I tell the children? And so I developed, with the assistance of a professor and a psychologist, a pamphlet that says what to tell the children. It's been translated in 4 different languages, and so it has international impact, that we can give that to parents who are really concerned about messages that they're going to give, because it's important what you tell the children, because the children think that it's their fault, and if they do something different, they could keep their parents together, and they take it all on themselves. And so the message given to them, and the timing of the message, and the age appropriateness of the message is really important. So I'm pleased that I was able to create that, which is still being published by not only the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, but the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. So that's good on a global scale. On just a small scale, I like that I've been able to help people through very difficult times in their lives, and it's very rewarding when I'm out and about and somebody might come up to me and they'll say, "You don't remember me, but you did this or you did that, and I'm so grateful to you." And I'll see the children for whom the parent I've won custody, and they tell me about how well their children are doing and what they've gone on to do and how I've changed their lives. And they'll tell me that they were with me at the worst time in their life and they've gone on, they've remarried maybe, or they've had other children or whatever the situation is. And so that's been wonderful too. So they're telling me about the impact that I'm having. And frankly, I feel it with every case. When it's over, people are so grateful that it's over, but they're also grateful about the outcome. And it's not necessarily because I'm the best lawyer in the world, although I really work hard and I try really hard. But, a lot of it is helping them know what to expect and what is a good outcome for them during the process.
How would you summarize the role of today's lawyers and the law firms in the future?
Today's lawyers are being bombarded from all sources. And of course, we're a service industry, but when you're getting text messages and phone calls and emails and everything else, pleadings from the case management systems, you really have to be on your toes and you can't miss anything. And the more help that's around supporting you as a lawyer, the better, because it's a lot and it's full time and it doesn't stop. Family law is 24/7. So being able to share the load is really helpful. So that would be what I would say is it's challenging for the young lawyers. Maneuvering with AI, the artificial intelligence, is going to be tricky because what the experts in AI are saying is lawyers are not going to be extinct, but lawyers who don't use AI will be, because we need to use that and understand that as a tool. We need to be familiar and conversant with it. And what I've also been told is that our clients are going to come to us with documents. They're going to already be prepared, and our job is going to be to review them and to make sure they're compliant and accurate and that they meet all of their needs. So we'll be reviewing documents likely, as opposed to generating documents in many instances. So that's going to be a change.
Now, at the present, today, we have covered a lot of what you're doing. What are your present activities?
Presently, I'm a mother, a grandmother. I love those roles. I'm a mother-in-law. So and I'm a daughter to my two living parents and a sister to my two brothers and sister-in-law. So family first.
Mhm.
And that's always been at my heart and will continue to be always. And I hope I can pass that sentiment down to all of my family members yet to come. I certainly learned it from generations above me. Then as a lawyer, I'm an active practitioner. I don't have plans to not be, because it's so rewarding to me to be able to help people along the way. I'm sure at some point I will not be doing this, but I don't know when, because as long as I can, I'm going to. And my daughter and I kid about she's going to have to carry me out, and she says she's going to go with me when she does that. So that might be the case. I am active in the community in which I live and want to continue to be. So I love helping the organizations that need our help so much. And certainly in these days and times when sources are hard to get for financial backing, it's critically important to provide the services to our community that they need for families, for young girls, for young men, girls and boys growing up. So that's important to me, and I'm working on that mission. So staying active in the community, but then also too in the bar associations. I want to continue to support the bar organizations that have meant so much to me in my career and continue my involvement with them locally, in the state, in the nation, and internationally.
On that theme, what are projects that you have yet to accomplish?
That's interesting. I am thrilled now to be on the board of the Nashville School of Law. So that's a new project that I have taken on. I was delighted to be asked to be on that board. So that's another one that I have not mentioned that just occurred recently. So I'm thrilled about that.
And what are your retirement parameters for the type of retirement that you see yourself having?
Yeah.
You just said you'll be carried out, so maybe there aren't any parameters here.
Well, my parents have been wonderful. They have given me their condominium in Boca Raton, so I've been redoing that. And I hope that I'll spend weekends from time to time there. That's my thought. I'm going to share it with all of my family. So the whole extended family, I want to be able to use it. So it'll be available for us, and I'm going to keep it going. I think about whether I would really go there as a retired person, and I won't leave Nashville. I won't leave my
But will you
family.
travel? Will that
I
be?
travel a lot already, and my plan is to continue to travel. My travel doesn't interfere with my law practice, because now with the tools that we have, we can work from anywhere, and I do. My clients don't know where I am, and they don't care where I am, as long as I'm talking to them and making sure that we get accomplished what they want accomplished. They don't care where I am. So it gives me the ability to travel. And, I can Zoom, I can phone call with them, I can do whatever I need to do and keep going. And I'm happy to be working wherever I am. So it works. It all works.
One last question, the final question, and that is, what concerns do you have about someone like your daughter as an attorney going forward? You mentioned AI, you mentioned business development, you mentioned the rewards and the pitfalls of the practice. So what concerns do you have for a young person like your daughter?
I hope that lawyers into the future will maintain the professionalism of practice. I think it's important for lawyers to maintain client control. And by that, I mean not controlling the client, but educating the client so that the clients know what to expect and know how to act, and encourage them to do the right thing in respect to their spouse, their ex-spouse, and their family. And I think it's incumbent upon us as lawyers to facilitate that in this family law practice. And my concern is that some lawyers will just do whatever their client asks them to do without evaluating it, testing it, asking them further questions about it, and writing nasty letters because they can, and filing motions that are not necessary when you can pick up the phone and try to work something out. And the practice has gotten a little more litigious, litigious, yes. Thank you. Than I think it was before. And I think lawyers aren't as respectful of each other as they used to be. I think they're not as respectful as judges as they used to be. And I think we've got a duty and obligation to try to preserve that. I think we've got some challenges to our whole system of laws that concern me. And I think that will impact my daughter Marissa and her practice and her generation of practitioners. Because if you don't do those things, it makes it a lot more difficult for everybody, for the judges, for the lawyers, and for their respective clients. It's not productive. It's not helpful.
And I think you closed when you were talking to me about this, that it's important to keep your practice in perspective and nurture those who you love and who love you, and don't put them in second place.
Absolutely.
I really, really liked the way that you phrased that.
Yes.
And Marlene, I have now had the great privilege of taking your oral history for the National Bar Association. And this concludes it.
Well, I want to say that I owe you a great debt of appreciation, and I'm honored to have been interviewed by you. You are a mentor of mine, as I've said. I've always looked up to you and your practice and the way you conduct not only your professional life, your life as a judge, but as a dear friend of mine. And so I am grateful for all the time. And it was many hours. This may not look like it was so polished because I may not have done a good job, but to the extent that it wasn't, it's because of me. It's not because of you, who worked so hard to make sure it would be a polished production. And I'm just grateful to you and grateful to have you in my life, because you have been a significant part of my life, including social events, walking together, talking together, being supportive, and you are dear, and I'm
I
grateful
know
to
that you do get up at 5 a.m. because I've seen you at 5 a.m.
We
in the
walk
morning.
together.
And I also feel the same way, Marlene, that I'm very privileged to have you as a dear friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.